I made a movie earlier this year called Nuked, with this incredible ensemble cast and helmed by Justin Bartha and Anna Camp. And we made the picture in Arkansas. And when I went to Arkansas, I was told, oh, don't even try. You're never going to be green here. There's not infrastructure. And of course, that wasn't true. And through a little bit of effort and a lot of conversations, we did have a sustainable set. And the crew was very excited about having a sustainable set and learned so much. And the entire team that helped us stay green wants to move that forward in other films and projects they work on that come through the state. So it's to me, Tandem, why we say a platform for people, the planet, and powerful storytelling is because I am a content creation company. I am a film producer, but how I make that work is important to me. And I want to do it in a way that is respectful of the immense amount of talent from so many different places, cultures, backgrounds, genders that exist in this space, not just who might be most convenient to me, and respectful of what you said at the top of this, right? That we're all in it together.
Welcome to People Are the Answer. I truly believe that people are the only answer to the world's many problems. I'm Jeffrey M. Zucker, a serial entrepreneur, here to learn how innovators are creating outsized, transformational social impact and to shine a light on all the good happening in a world often hyper-focused on the negative. Today's episode features my friend Julie Christeas, a film producer whose works include Black Bear starring Aubrey Plaza, Surrogates, and the upcoming Nuked. Her movies have shown at incredible film festivals like Sundance and South by Southwest, among many more. Julie tremendously weaves impact into her work, not only via the content she creates, but in her focus on inclusivity, how she operates sets, and beyond. Julie's films have received multiple Green Seals from the Environmental Media Association, including the Gold Green Seal for Black Bear. Julie and I discuss her journey from immigrating from Greece at a young age to growing up in Brooklyn and New Jersey, her unexpected path to becoming a producer, her impact on my production career, how taking care of the environment is a win-win for impact and business, and much more. Here is Julie Christeas on People Are the Answer. Julie, thank you for joining me on People Are the Answer.
You're so welcome, Jeffrey. I'm really excited to speak with you today. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Always great to chat and excited to share your story. And it'd be great if you could start off by just telling our listeners who you are, where you're based, and what your current role is.
Oh, sure. My name is Julie Christeas. I'm a film producer. I founded and run a company called Tandem Pictures, a platform for people, the planet, and powerful storytelling. And I'm currently in my home office in New Jersey, which gets a bad rap and is a lovely state.
Awesome. Yeah, people seem to have mixed feelings on New Jersey, but I'd say that most people that are from there seem to like it.
I did too. Before I moved here, I did as well. But it's a lovely place to be.
And in life in general, what would you say motivates you?
Oh my gosh. In my career as a person, I would say I have always had a deep desire to test myself, to run my best race, whatever that means, and approach each day from a place of where am I personally, understanding that every day is not the same. Maybe something is happening that's making me sad or anxious or angry, and those days are just as frequent as the ones that make me joyous and victorious and laugh, and to approach that day knowing that anyone I'm communicating with at any given time, my family, my colleagues, people I've not met before, are having their own experience. And my motivation stems from a place of really trying to understand how I can walk my best path through this life
Yeah.
and be generous and open to how someone else might be walking on their path through this
Yeah.
life.
I mean, that was beautifully said. And, um, I've been trying to keep that in mind as well in terms of everyone has their own thing going on. And I think just, the fact that you're starting to take that into everything you do all the time is just so important. And if more of us in the world thought that way, it would go very far in how we end up interacting.
Yeah, I mean, even, driving to the supermarket or something mundane and that we do just like for survival, right? All of the time. And I find myself, maybe I'm aggravated behind the person who's going 22 miles an hour or just cut someone else off and is going 85 miles an hour. Um, and I'm Mediterranean, so I have a tendency to have a big personality and be expressive and um, have a temper like everybody else. And then I just remind myself, like, man, just you be safe. You take your time. Don't, like, whomever is driving that car has something happening that I'm not in control of. And it's not worth the energy it takes to get into an argument and potentially a dangerous one for myself. And that's just in, a simple example in a vehicle, but
Yeah.
throughout all of our experiences every single day, it is important to remember, because I think it increases our understanding that, we are in this together. We're sharing this
Yes.
planet together.
Well, that is the perfect thing to share on this podcast, because that's something I say a lot. We're all citizens of Earth just trying to make it.
Yes. That is really true. We are all getting through the day together on this earth.
So, yes, we are all citizens of this Earth that need to just get along and move forward together. And speaking of citizenship, where did you grow up and what was it like there?
Well, I was born in Greece. My mother is a Jewish woman from Brooklyn whose family originated in Poland and came over during um, the Nazi occupation during the World War. And my father is Greek, from many generations of Greek people. So when he and my mother had their children, we were both born in Athens and then moved to Brooklyn, New York, and then to New Jersey. So my experience growing up was always on the East Coast. And my experience growing up was through the lens of an American citizen born abroad. And
And
I
how
guess
old were you when you moved over?
we were young. I think I was just after 2 years old, very, very small. Um, but the idea of being Americans was something that was instilled in me from a very young age. And the difference to my parents of having the ability to dream something larger than might be my existing set of circumstances, from my family. And for my dad, especially, as an immigrant, um, and someone who took, over 2 decades to become a citizen himself, that idea of what American soil had to offer was lived very, very large in our home.
Yeah. Yeah, that I can imagine, my dad having immigrated from Israel and my grandparents coming from Poland. Certainly, the American dream was a part of their lives, and me learning about it growing up, and it's cool to hear the parallels there. And it sounds like you had some interesting people to learn from.
For sure. um, yeah, I mean, my parents certainly are interesting people in their own right, which is another podcast, I feel
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned growing up in New York, and um, what was kind of childhood like for you? Did you kind of have aspirations of what you wanted to do in terms of being in film? Is that something that came later?
I definitely did not have aspirations of being in film. I grew up in Brooklyn. Growing up in Brooklyn, I lived in the Mill Basin, Bergen Beach area. My parents rented the mother-daughter home. We lived on the top floor until they moved to New Jersey and bought their own home. And Brooklyn, I think, was an incredible place to grow up. I mean, I remember my street so vividly, and the kids who lived on my side of the street as opposed to the other side of the street, and the school I went to, and how diverse we all were. It felt curated almost, the amount of cultures and races and backgrounds and countries that we all came from. And I went to a public school, and it was really engendered in us as if it were a given set of circumstances that, you know, our lives, the globe, would look like this, and how we treated each other in every moment was a choice that we could make, and to have understanding and empathy for our fellow classmates or not. I mean, I love Brooklyn to this day. Sheepshead Bay is one of my absolute favorite places to be, and I still fantasize sometimes about having a little place there, even if it's just for myself, to go to. And then New Jersey, I moved to New Jersey when I was in the 4th grade. So that age was like a humongous transition. I remember like shaving my head. I had really, really long hair in Brooklyn, like way past my waist, that my mother like lovingly braided all the time. And I shaved, my mother was horrified. I shaved my head before we moved to New Jersey, and I went with a really thick Brooklyn accent. So it took some time.
So that was
to
an act
acclimate.
of protest?
Not protest, but just like we were starting something new. I don't know what I was thinking. I was mostly just like, this is part of what belongs here. I'm going to start fresh.
It's like a renewal.
Yeah. Popularity wise, not the best choice I could have made to make friends at a new school. But yeah, I mean, I had as best of an experience, I think, as I could have as a kid going through public school.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, sort of how you reacted at that age. I mean, obviously that's a huge life transition. And it sounds like it worked out for the best, though.
It did. And I made friends eventually, and all that good stuff. So for anyone who's considering shaving their head, don't not do it. For that reason.
Yep. And, it sounds like you had some great examples set for you and some great values instilled in you growing up. Is there any particular experience that you remember from childhood that sort of showed you the importance of giving back?
Of giving back? What an interesting question.
Because you give back now in what you do and in the way that you do it. And you talked about how ingrained, giving back and just people are in your mindset. So yeah, my thinking in asking innovators and impact this particular question is like, was there something that sort of ignited this fire in you that you saw happen? Like, was there an inciting incident?
Well, two things. I'll be more stereotypical answer on the first one, a little more vulnerable on the second one. So the first one is that, yes, my Greek grandmother, my father's mother, Christeas Koulikari, came from an amazing lineage of shipbuilders and engineers, and she was one of the only female captains at that time, and she could build a boat and sail a boat and captain a boat as well, if not better, than her brothers. And as she got older, she had, some small, that her family had owned apartments and things that people rented. And my mother loves to tell the story that she would go with Christeas to collect rent on the first of the month. And Christeas never took the money from anyone because she knew the people living in those few apartments that she had couldn't afford to pay the rent. And instead, the two women, my mother and Christeas, would go food shopping, and they would buy groceries for everyone who lived in that little complex. And she would go and have a coffee, and they would make something and talk. And it wasn't a very good business model, certainly. But that's what she felt she could do for people who needed when she didn't at that time of her life.
Yeah.
And then, so that is from a point of view of having in order to give.
Yeah.
And my second, more vulnerable thing is that as kids, my family went through a period where my parents did quite well. My dad's a wonderful craftsman and inventor and did all sorts of cool things in our childhood, and had one of the first convertible businesses that made hard tops into soft tops. And then in the 80s, like many people in this country, lost everything. And it was so bad that our family, was debating whether we would have to sleep in our Cadillac for a little while until my parents could find some place that they could afford to live. And it's hard to articulate the experience of going from someone who never thought about where they might find food, where a refrigerator is always full, where your home has everything that you need, to someone who all of a sudden was worried, can we have a home? Forget about like where your next meal, where your next anything might come from. And that experience altered me somehow. And I think I always felt no matter what I did, I would do it generously. I would give generously of myself. And that as I built whatever framework would exist around my life, that I would remember no matter what my experience was, there was someone else today who was having a difficult time too, or a much more difficult time than I am having. And I just always wanted to be part of the community that said, it doesn't really matter whether I have a lot or a little, something of what I have, I can do good with. I can share. I can make a difference, whether it's money, goods, time. There are so many ways that we can all give back. And happily at this point, through Tandem Pictures, my company does do a financial give back at the end of every year and take a portion of our profits and give back. And I do my best to also give of my time to younger producers who are coming up, or to mentor kids who are coming out of school, or to go to NYU and speak at a film class and just give generously of myself, of my experience, of my own, who am I, that has nothing to do with finances, but has to do with what I love and what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, well, I love that. And as an ambitious producer myself, you've been very generous in giving me time to learn from you. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah. So when did film really enter the picture for you? I saw that you went to Emerson, which is well known for its film program.
Well, I went to Emerson as an acting major, if you can believe it. I had a pretty circuitous route to film. So I've always been very, very interested, as I think you can glean, in the human experience. And that initially led me, when I was thinking about jobs I might be good at, that I might like to do, to think about psychiatry and the study of the human brain. And then right as I was leaving college and really looking at schools and what I wanted to do, I had an epiphany, and I thought, I'm so curious about entertainment. I'm so curious about storytelling. I think I want to do that. But the challenge was that I didn't know anything about the business at all, all I knew was what I saw in the movies that I loved, in the television that I loved, right? Which was the front of the camera piece. And I got very lucky, Jeffrey. I auditioned for, myriad of schools from NYU to USC. I got into all of them. And I ultimately chose a program where the school was a manageable size. I knew I didn't want to go to a humongous university, and that I got the largest scholarship program from, and that's what took me to Emerson. And I had the great fortune of being there when Kristen Linklater was the head of that department, and studying with such an authority on breath, and that brand of work was just a life-changing experience that I don't regret at all, because I think what makes me such a strong producing ally to the teams that I work with is that I really do understand how to break down a story and a script, and look at characters from, what is their spine? Who is this person? What are they speaking for? How are they making their choices? All of those things that help us tell the great stories that we want to tell. So I went to school. I got my BFA in acting. I studied Shakespeare. I came to New York. I did classical theater for a few years. And as those few years went by, I really was like, man, this is not for me. I did not know what I was thinking with this acting school, but being on stage, I had horrible stage fright. It just wasn't a correct fit. And through
Well,
a
but it
bunch of
sounds like it was, sorry to interject, it
no,
sounds like it was the
please.
right thing to do at the time. And had you not done it, maybe you would have always wondered. So I think it was good
For
to sort of get
sure.
that out of your system.
For sure. But the feeling that you have, like when you're doing the thing that you say you wanted to do, but it's like, it's not a centering experience. It doesn't feel right. It didn't feel like I was using all of myself in the way that I wanted to. And I had an opportunity to produce an agency web advertisement through a friend of mine. And I was like, gosh, I really don't know how to do this, but let me give it a shot. And I, put together my first budget, and I got a director, and the director introduced me to a cinematographer, and the cinematographer put together a crew. And I went into the agency and I pitched this little thing, and I got the job. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh gosh, that's the world. I see, like the universe opened before me. I was like, I see all the people, I see these jobs. This is what I want to be doing. And from that one little thing, I built a career in New York, because New York really is a place where if you're willing to work hard and you're smart, people will use you and promote you because they need you on their team. So I coordinated and production managed. I learned to line produce. I really was able to build a nice career in production here that I hadn't anticipated, had it not been for that one little thing that timing wise just was perfect for me to say yes to.
Yeah. I mean, it's really cool to hear how that all came together. And, having about a year ago shot a feature film from scratch with my business partner and figuring all of that stuff out as we went, honestly, having spent some time on sets and things like that, but never taken up what you did with this first project, I can imagine that sort of learning on the line and figuring out things as they go, and what that was like, and how things had to go well and fall into place. Even with the hardest work and the best intentions, that doesn't always happen.
Yeah. I mean, it was an incredible experience. Like I said, it was an experience where I really had to ask myself, well, how do you do this? And I remember the first job I got production managing, I looked through the resumes. I had never production managed a film before. And I looked through the resumes of the people who hadn't gotten the job. And I called one of them whose resume I thought was quite good. And I said, hi, my name is Julie Christeas. You're in this stack of resume. I got the job. This is my first This is my first production managing job. Can I take you out to dinner and pick your brain on a lot of things that I don't know how to do? And of course, that could have gone one of two ways. The guy could have hung the phone up on me and said, happy that you got the job. Clearly, I should have gotten it if you're the one calling me to ask questions, but that's not what happened. He said yes, and we had a wonderful lunch, and he, kind of mentored me. Really, like, every time I had a question, I was able to pick up the phone and ask someone who had done it before. And that experience actually is something that fuels me too, that I remember, there's all of these people on set that I now have the joy of being in a position of hiring, right? All of these people have dreams and hopes and departments they want to work in and things they're trying to figure out. And I can be open and accessible to them. And if someone has a question, they can call me. I can be that person. So it's come full circle, and I'm very thankful to know his name is Noah Workman, who was one of the first people who helped me in that way.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear, and certainly, how I've seen it work as well is just leaning on people that have done it before. And it seems like with you, knowing that you've been really helpful to me, someone was helpful to you and you're paying it forward. So, I appreciate that. And it seems to be the case a lot within the industry. And I'd be curious with as to your perspective on this. For me, when I started working in film about 8 years ago, just seeing sort of the symphony that is the set. Everyone has their own job that they know what it is and they do it, and they know that if they do it well and everybody does the one job they have and does it right and well, it'll all come together. And I just love that aspect of the set where it just seems like everyone knows what they need to do.
Yeah, I think it's in conjunction with the bigger picture of what are we here to make anyway, right? And that, the director, whomever it is that's the captain of that ship, hopefully has such a strong and inspiring vision that no matter what department it is, whether it's their cinematographer and production designer, or a production assistant who might be picking up their lead actor, that everyone feels incentivized to go to work, to do what they do best, because they're part of a story, part of a team that's creating something we all believe in, that we all want to be there to do. That's the best part of independent film, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's so true. You can certainly feel the difference on a set where people care about what they're making versus one where they don't want to be there.
For sure.
So you started off, with this first agency ad. How did that eventually develop into getting into feature films?
Um, it's a very New York story, in that one person led to another person, led to a job, led to a coffee, led to me, answering a Craigslist ad or really anything to get as much experience as I could. And by the time I had enough years working through the production office, and I was looking for a way to translate the production experience I had to the storytelling desires that I always had as a kid, and through college, right, through going for acting. And I had the opportunity to take a job at an independent film company in Soho at the time, and I was an executive across both production and development. And it was really there that I started to understand how those things really feed each other, and what types of projects really excited me the most, and what type of filmmakers I wanted to work with the most, and how could I put together teams in a way that was meaningful to me, and select projects that I thought would be successful, but also that spoke for a way of life or for some societal issue that I felt needed a light shone on it. Um, so it was through quite a lot of luck, and also just being open um, to the yes. So if I met with someone and they said, yes, I'd like you to come work on this, or yes, you can shadow this person, or yes, let's make this thing, and this will be how you fit into the puzzle. I i took all of those opportunities because I didn't know yet where I ultimately wanted to land, but I knew that if I worked with enough people and saw enough different styles and was part of enough projects, that I'd figure it out.
Yeah. That's a great attitude, and one I attempt to share for sure. And so, um, I know that you've produced over a dozen films and that you've often worked as the line producer. For those listening that aren't familiar with a line producer, can you fill them in?
Yes. Well, I worked as a line producer for the first part of my career, and then once I started Tandem Pictures, the size of the project started to get large enough that I really needed to hire a line producer so I could be, at monitor, so I could be doing a different part of the producing and be a creative ally too, and also first line of defense for investors. But a line producer is one of the most important jobs on set. The line producer is the person who initially lines the budget. So they take the script and every single thing in the script, from locations to cast to props to costumes, all of it. And they figure out initially how long we need to make the work, how many physical days we need to make the work, and an estimate of what all of the things contained in each and every day will cost. And then they add on, rehearsals and post production and legals and finishing, like color correction and VFX and all the stuff that makes a movie look and sound incredible. And you come up with a number. And then that person is part of the film team and the producing team, because it is their job to make sure that even when those lines move around, even when money is spent differently than we initially estimated or anticipated, which happens all the time, that
Yeah.
ultimately we have enough to successfully complete our movie
Yeah.
on time with the budget that we have. So
Yeah.
they're an exceptionally important hire, and an exceptionally important team member from start to
Yeah.
finish, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree in my experience, and I'll give a shout out to my friend Prem Shaw, who is my favorite line producer that I've worked with thus far. And on our most recent feature, my business partner Jeff Tyner and I basically did it all ourselves, amongst many other things. He was directing, I was producing and acting, and I think if we'd had a more experienced line producer, we probably would have gotten a little bit closer to our budget than we did, but we certainly learned a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's a great learning experience that you guys had for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And so you mentioned starting out your career in as a line producer, and then sort of having to go into different roles as you got into bigger projects. So for those listening that aren't that familiar with the film industry, what are some other things that a producer might be up to?
Producers are responsible for everything, my friends. You are responsible. I mean, especially as a person who's not a studio executive. So I'm the lead producer in my own company, which means that the filmmaker relationships are mine. The development of the script just of the whole story is happening with me and the writer. If it's not a writer director and we're hiring a director, that's also what a producer does. The producer packages the whole project. So we, hire the casting director. We're figuring out with the casting director and our director what actors not only creatively serve the work, but depending on the budget level, allow us to finance that work. Then we finance that work, whether that's through the studio system or getting minimum guarantees against, our talent and potentially genre or director from foreign territories, or we're raising equity and using a tax credit. The framework is different. And then we're on set, we're helping sculpt who that team is, who are we hiring, what state are we going to, what has the most robust credit while allowing us to make the project that we want. Then we're there all through the post process and giving notes on dailies and eventually the edit and coordinating all of the post deals. And then if there's going to be a festival circuit, the producers doing that and helping create the strategy with which we will ultimately sell that movie, and bringing on our sales agents and having all of these discussions that eventually place the film in the market in the best possible way. So it is a holistic job. I love that I had a lot of production experience and that I understood all of the working pieces of set, because I do think it helps me be a better producer and problem solve if something is going wrong. It's not about, having a panic attack and firing everybody. It's just like some very usually small adjustments that help the team work as best as they can together.
Yeah, it's certainly a really holistic, versatile position being a producer. And, a lot of it, especially during the on-set time, is being a problem solver. And, like you said, a lot of times there's a small change you can make that can fix a problem. And most of them you can get to the bottom of. And I think that is probably what makes it exciting, is just that there's always moving parts. There's always stuff to deal with, for better or worse. It's not, doing the same thing every day by any means.
Definitely not. And actually, I want to take this opportunity to just acknowledge that in the entertainment industry, we are right now in the midst of a huge strike. Both our Writers Guild and our Screen Actors Guild are striking right now for myriad of reasons, and that there's a lot of crew and cast and teams that are out of work.
I wanted to briefly pause to add the context that the actors' strike ended on November 9th.
And looking to the studios and the AMPTP specifically to regulate practices and salaries for fair and equitable wages across the board, no matter position. So I just want to, with all of my heart, shout out all of the people who are on the picket lines and working hard to see change so that we can all go back to work. And I do, if we have some producers listening, and you're not part of the new producers union, not the PGA, which is a wonderful professional association guild that I am a member of, but the new producers union, the producers union as well, has unionized to go after collective bargaining for us too. So there's a good opportunity here if you are in the industry to learn more about that and how you can be helpful to that cause. So thanks for letting me say that, Jeffrey.
No, thank you for sharing, and we'll make sure to include those links. And yeah, I mean, it's a really pivotal moment right now in the film industry, and there's a lot of different things at odds. And if there's any other aspects you want to discuss, I'm happy to.
No, gosh, there's so much, and it's so nuanced, but mostly I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that there is a new producers union as well, and that we, for as much as we do, we are not the studio executives making tens of millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. The average independent producer's annual salary is $25,000, if you can imagine. And that's because we're asked to put our fees back into the movie constantly. We do all of the packaging, all of the strategy, all of the work, and are usually the last to get paid or not at all. So it's important to recognize what's happening industry wide, and that there's an opportunity here to have all of the departments, right? All of the people who put their art and their blood, sweat, and tears into the content that we love to watch, to be acknowledged properly. And part of that acknowledgement is through fair and equitable wages.
Yep, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And, take this opportunity to transition to talk about Tandem Pictures. You've mentioned it a few times. So you started the company in 2010. Tell me about Tandem.
Tandem Pictures is my love. It's my other baby. I have an 8-year-old son whom I adore, and my other baby is Tandem Pictures. I've been very, very blessed to run my own company since 2010. I really can't believe it. And the pride that I feel that I've not only been able to take care of myself and my family, but take care of so many incredible crew members through this company. And I started Tandem kind of naively, truthfully, not really knowing what it took to open a business, but knowing that I wanted to be at the helm of choosing projects and filmmakers. And at the time, I really wanted to shine a light on women, and not only women in front of the camera, but just all of the positions where women were underrepresented in the film space. And I very quickly realized, like I'm sure anyone who ever points a lens at an underrepresented community, that, it's not just women. And there, what about people of color? What about differently abled people? There's a ton of ageism in film and Hollywood. There's all of the incredible crew members on the LGBTQIA spectrum. We can build teams that reflect the global audience we want to watch our projects. And not only can we do it, when we do it, it absolutely makes the work better, period, the end of the story. I think the worst thing people can do is crew up with a team of people that look like themselves with the same point of view.
Yep.
What good does that ever serve any story? So that was one thing. And then in the last, 5 or 6 years, I really started to think about something that I was naturally doing, which was wanting to take measures on set to be sustainable. How could I not be contributing to this climate problem we have through my work? And I really made a choice that I would stop just thinking about it and doing it partially, and commit to doing it on every set all the time, whether it was a commercial or piece of branded content or a movie. And those two things, that intersection, just really began to feel to me the way that I wanted to work, and how I hope I can influence people to work as they move forward in their own careers. I made a movie earlier this year called Nuked, with this incredible ensemble cast, and helmed by Justin Bartha and Anna Camp. And we made the picture in Arkansas. And when I went to Arkansas, I was told, oh, don't even try. You're never going to be green here. There's not infrastructure. And of course that wasn't true. And through a little bit of effort and a lot of conversations. We did have a sustainable set, and the crew was very excited about having a sustainable set and learned so much. And the entire team that helped us stay green wants to move that forward in other films and projects they work on that come through the state. So it's to me, Tandem, why we say a platform for people, the planet, and powerful storytelling is because I am a content creation company. I am a film producer, but how I make that work is important to me. And I want to do it in a way that is respectful of the immense amount of talent from so many different places, cultures, backgrounds, genders that exist in this space, not just who might be most convenient to me, and respectful of what you said at the top of this, right? That we're all in it together. So if I'm coming into your community to make my work, I think the least I can do is respect the area that you live in, and hopefully leave the location better for having had me, as opposed to leaving a ton of waste and trash behind that does a huge disservice to the space and the people who live there.
If you're enjoying this episode, I would greatly appreciate if you could review, like, comment, or subscribe on your favorite platforms. Your engaged support goes a long way in helping the show grow and getting our impactful guests heard. Now back to the show. Yeah, no, I mean, I love what you're doing with that, and I want to dig into some of those specifics. First, I wanted to say just sort of my summary of what Tandem is, mostly from the words from your website, is that you give a platform to underrepresented ideas, and you're filmmakers driven by justice and representation for both people and the planet. And I love that summary, and it very much comes through in your work.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And, I think representation is so important. You talked about it, why it makes a huge difference. And you talked about, why not to have homogenous sets. So just maybe if you could cap that off with kind of a importance of representation summary in the film industry.
I mean, I think it is in the film industry, of course, because we're still fighting an uphill battle to have a lot of positions be more than 20-something white cisgender men, or on the opposite spectrum, much older white cisgender men. So yes, representation is important, but I do really stand by that not only is it an incredible thing. I mean, I started this podcast by saying I didn't even know there was a world behind the camera. I didn't know that was something that would be open to me. I didn't know that as a woman, I could even own my own company, let alone a successful one. I didn't know. So part of what I want to do is put myself out there. So I'm part of the loud cacophony of voices saying, I'm here, I'm working, I'm doing it. It's not just one type of person, but also the very real truth that it makes better work for us to include talented human beings from different cultures, races, backgrounds, and genders than our own. It just does. The point of view from having someone who experiences life in a different way than you do will make your work better. It will. And if you take the time to start cultivating contacts that may not be the most convenient, maybe they didn't go to film school with you, Maybe they don't know your parents. However it is you're putting together your community, if you take the time to really investigate, you will find incredibly talented humans who are looking for their chance too, and who will ally their work right alongside the director and the story that you're trying to put into the world. I hope I've said that in an articulate way. It felt very rambly, but I've seen it so many times. It is just a truth. The work will be better for having representation. Period. The end of the story.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I hope it's a message that continues to permeate, not only through the film industry, but through so much of society. Another big aspect of your work that you mentioned is creating sustainable sets. What is a sustainable set?
A sustainable set is a set that takes into account the environmental toll of the work that we do and makes choices across every line. We spoke about line producing and budgets, every line in the budget, to make choices that are better for the environment. So that is something that's built into, ideally, that would be built into the budget ahead of time. And if it's not, it's something that certainly can be discussed and retrograded if you hear this and say, oh, I'm going to be making a movie when the strike is over, or I have my interim agreement, I'm really curious about how I can do this sustainably now more than ever. You can still do it, and you can do that through working with an environmental consultant. There are wonderful places. Emily O'Brien, I've sat on panels with many times, runs Earth Angels, who helps projects. Or you can go to the SPA website, the Sustainable Producers Alliance website, and you can find the green guide on how to begin looking at your budget and making environmentally correct choices. And the great thing is that it doesn't have to be, you don't have to get it right all at once. And the right is always changing, and you can learn and do more every time. So I'm looking at this poster of Black Bear behind me, right? So that was a set where we achieved the gold award from the Green Seal program at the Environmental Media Association, the EMA. And we achieved that gold award because we achieved our highest level of sustainability. We had a solar paneled location, for God's sake. We had a chef on premises. We used hard silverware and plates. We threw nothing away. We had no disposable goods at all, no single-use plastics. Everyone refilled water bottles. We powered our equipment through solar power. I mean, the choices go on and on and on. And in the latest movie that I just did, Nuked, I also just found out, this is the kickoff, by the way. This week is Climate Week in New York City. So I feel good about saying we also achieved the gold seal from the EMA for Nuked. We did not have a solar powered location in Arkansas, but we did so many other things that were correct, from, vegan friendly clothing and meal options to compostable flatware to clothing that was made with environmentally friendly dyes as opposed to chemical toxins, to renting our set furnishings where we could as opposed to buying new, and then donating those furnishings if we did purchase them. We got a letter that we diverted 4,000 pounds of what would have been landfill waste into compost. So that's how deep of a difference, we can make. And I'm really skimming the surface here,
Yeah.
of what's possible, but there are so many tools online for us to to learn from. And I think if you if you call the EMA, if you email them, there's so many people who are accessible and really ready to help. You begin to understand how to take this journey. And I'll also say it really makes everyone feel great.
Yeah.
Outside of being lucky enough to go to work and make a movie every day, right? For all of the difficulties and all of the challenges and all of the daily things that happen that are unexpected. The fact that the team can walk away feeling like I was on a set where we didn't take 100 bags out of a storage bin and throw them on the side of a curb to be taken away by a garbage service, right? Or 200 bags or 500 bags, however many you generate over the course of your shoot. It really makes people feel great.
Yeah, it's really cool to hear the incredible impact you can have just, in one project. And um, I like the culture that it sets initially, training people to work this way. Um, it obviously is a ton of work to do this right. And your incentive is the impact. So, for those that are not as caring as you are, how do we incentivize those on other major
Money.
sets?
Money. I mean, it
Yeah.
saves you money. That's really the truth.
Okay.
And I know that there's some pushback initially because you say, okay, I want to eliminate single-use plastics, for instance. That's an easy one. Well, when I eliminate single-use plastics, that means I'm not going to have water bottles on set. So now, do I have to have a line in the budget where I'm purchasing the crew water bottles? Do I ask them to bring their own water bottles? Does that translate to coffee or tea mugs? Like, am I giving everyone something all of the time? And doesn't that cost me money? Now, the answer is nowadays you can ask most people to bring their own refillable water bottle and they have them. But I've also done it in the past where I have bought everyone a water bottle to use or a hot thermos to use, or even if the commercial shoot was long enough, a roll of bamboo cutlery that everyone was responsible with that came with a fork, a knife, a spoon, a straw, um, a little cleaning brush because I was in a place where maybe I couldn't get um, compostable disposables, or the shoot as a commercial was too short for me to get hard tableware and um, cutlery and all of the things that we would use. So even if you end up purchasing some things, you will find that you will save so much money, not only on the water bottles themselves, which, as we all know, end up being unfinished, unlabeled. You're not only then forced to recycle all this plastic, most of which isn't recycled and ends up in the ocean, but wasting all of this water that people aren't drinking. But think about the vehicles, the gasoline, the production assistant time to go pick up all those flats of water, bring them to set, pass them out. It is time and money for every single thing that you would look at, that you initially say to yourself, oh man, is this really going to be worth it? The answer is it is going to be worth it. And it
Yeah.
does save you money. Big television shows save a lot of money being green. Black Bear saved a lot of money not having to pay a humongous utility bill for that enormous estate we shot that movie on, right? We were using green energy. So there are absolutely financial perks, and if saving the planet isn't something that that you think you need to be part of, understood. Saving some money, I'm sure, is, and you will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I look forward to, working together, hopefully at some point, as well as
For
just trying
sure.
to implement these things on sets that I work on. Um, and then in addition to your work for diversity and for the environment, you also donate a percentage of profits each year.
Yes. So that's important to me. Every year, I feel like that I've been in business, and this is probably just being a part of the human race, like a conscious person on the planet. There there is something that happens that people need help from, whether it is, these huge storms that we've been having the last few years, and fires that are impacting people, or whether it's war refugees or schools that are in need, because of students that don't have the ability to have the same supplies that other kids have. Um, for me, abortion rights and women's rights are human rights, and things that are important for me as a person to advocate for and support. So I do want to take a portion of what I earn and donate it to those causes, no matter how small or how large, depending on the year. But just the importance of doing it, of taking my time and going through um, all of the things that happened this year, and all of the things that maybe people do see and don't see, and what spaces could use a little help.
Yeah, it's great to see the example that you're setting for others and just the great work that you're doing. A couple of your projects specifically have come up by name. Maybe we can dig in a little bit on those. You've mentioned Black Bear, certainly a fascinating movie that, just draws you in immediately and you can't look away. Um,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, and I mean I know that was on a sustainable set. Like what was that like to work on? Aubrey Plaza obviously is a huge star that you got to work with there as well.
That um, was one crazy ride, I will tell you, from start to finish. I mean, I remember reading that script, and the script, it was so beautifully crafted, Jeffrey. It was so beautifully crafted, and there's no genre that stands out like quality. Quality is quality. And I saw that it was written by a man, but there were so many themes around gender dynamics and status and structure, and at what cost do I make the thing I want to make. And I hadn't met Lawrence Levine before, and I flew to California to meet with him, and we sat down and we had the most incredible meeting for 2 hours, where I asked him all sorts of questions, and he answered them all very transparently. And I met his incredible wife, Sophia Takal, who I'm developing another film with. And, you know, um, I mean, I love Lawrence. I think he's incredibly smart and talented. Um, and I felt in our partnership just a very high level way of working with each other to see that movie through. And the cast, Aubrey had a very specific timeline that she needed to adhere to, and I had worked with Christopher Abbott before, so as I was sending the project to him, Aubrey's agent had said, "Oh, we're interested in Chris." I was like, "Oh my God, what a synchronistic thing! I just sent the script to him." Both of them had wanted to work with Sarah Gadon, who was also represented at CAA. So that all came together pretty organically. And, it's a wild movie, and we had a wild time out in the Adirondacks with almost no cell service for the entire time that we were out there.
Yeah, when I was watching it, I was thinking about like what it must have been like to be on that set and just be in sort of that remote environment. And how long were you guys there?
I was there about 5 weeks, soup to nuts, I would say.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to just. I think that's one thing I like about making films is just sort of you get to just dive into them very deeply for that amount of time.
Yeah.
Obviously on the producer side, there's more time, but specifically that time when you're shooting.
Well, and that's the thing too, like, with the sustainable choices, right? That was a relatively short shoot, right, as far as movies go. But you're in a place for months at a time. Think about the difference between like eating with plastic fork and knife that's like breaking at every meal for your entire existence, or sitting down with people and having a meal on a real plate using an actual fork and knife, and the community that it builds for something so simple. And to make everyone feel good, you're also making an environmentally correct choice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the way you put that. And, um, we could, I've got fair amount more for us. So I don't want to dig too deep into other specific projects that much, but are there any other ones you want to dig in before we move to another topic?
I mean, I would love to just, quickly talk about Nuked, because we are in the throes of finishing, and I'm sure that'll come out next year. But that one too was a project where we had a really incredible ensemble cast, and they all brought so much heart and dedication to set every single day. And I think you really you see it in the movie.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to hear about it, or sorry, I can't wait to see it. And I've been hearing about it from you for quite a while, and I've been, able to learn a lot about it. So yeah, can't wait to see that hit the screen. Um, and just excited for all of your future endeavors. And one thing I saw you're involved with that I wanted to ask about is the BRIC Foundation. Break, reinvent, impact, change is what that stands for. So could you tell us what that is and how you're involved?
So something I did during COVID, with the team that did PR for Black Bear, actually, Sunshine Sachs, they're incredible. Was I said, I want to do a give back, right? What can I do? I can create an hour long master class on producing 101, but I can do it with a sustainable tilt. So, I think I did it for SCAD, the University of SCAD in Georgia, and NYU, and Arizona, and all sorts of universities that have wonderful film programs. Because at that time, even though film, there's no path that anyone could tell you, if you do this, you'll be successful. But at that time, even all of the internships at agencies, at festivals that anyone would do coming out of film school weren't happening because of COVID. So I really wanted to do something for those students. And BRIC was one of the places that I spoke at. I believe I sat on a panel with them, a DEIJ panel with them, and it's an incredible organization devoted to representation, and the work that they continue to do is just astounding. But I think the panel that I did it had to be 2021. So it's been a while since I've worked with them.
Awesome. Well, I found them very interesting. It was cool to see that you were engaged with them. And, you know, in general, something I'm inspired by your work is your focus on impact projects, whether that's, it goes all the way around in your work, impact on the set, impact in the messaging within the content. And, it's something I preach a lot, is that film is one of the few ways to really capture attention these days. And whether it's a very complex narrative all the way to being, a subject matter documentary, there are ways to create empathy and to create education within film. And, certainly my favorite is weaving messages into narratives the way that, we talked about with Black Bear, for instance, and, gender dynamics and things like that. And, one movie that I've seen recently that I thought created tremendous impact, and we haven't officially announced it yet, but we're going to do a special podcast episode about it, is Barbie. And, I just thought, wow, especially, for women's empowerment and among so many things, I just thought it was kind of a master class in creating impact film. And I was just curious if you've seen it, what your thoughts are on it.
I have seen it. I I missed opening weekend, the Barbenheimer weekend, but I think the week after I went and I saw both of those tremendous films. I mean, first, all hail Greta Gerwig. My goodness, like her filmography is just unbelievable. And, she had some amazing partners on that film too. But I think what I thought was most exceptional, and I'll say spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it, maybe you want to shut off the podcast now, is that opening bit of the revolution of baby dolls, right? Like the whole gestation of Barbie. Why was the only toy that girls had baby dolls, and being trained that our future would be to take care of these babies, right? Nothing else. And she has this incredible opening that, mimics Kubrick's 2001
Yep.
Space Oddity, which just like, I mean, I guffawed and I think I cried like all in the first like 3 minutes of that film because I was just so blown away by how just brilliant that opening was. And she had the best case scenario for the movie she was making, right? She took something that could be viewed as superficial and unimportant, and she made something that people really put their hearts into. And the movie very easily speaks about how women came to think about themselves the way that we have, and that our measure and our worth has for the longest time been based on how we are seen standing next to the more powerful, successful gender. And it doesn't have to be that way. That there's a lot of power and success in being a woman, especially since we are the ones who, if there is a family to be started, carry, birth, recover, and go back to all of the things that we do outside of that. So it was a really, and also just what fun. I mean, how she constructed that whole thing, the sets just absolutely delicious. I mean, what a wonderful viewing experience. It's really no shock that it has been the global success that it has.
Yeah.
That it has been, and it's inspiring. I'm working on another project now called Run Amok with a female filmmaker, Nitzan Mager, who wrote a script that deals with gun violence in schools. And you can't, what a subject matter to tackle. And she's choosing to do it through the point of view of absurdity, that it is absurd that in American culture, we have accepted this as a normal day to day, that we do lockdown drills and active shooter drills because there may very well be a day this school year where someone comes into our child's school with a gun with intent to harm and kill. So, her film takes place, 10 years after the fact. And as I said, is done through a very interesting and specific point of view. But these are the types of stories that are important to tell, and it's important to constantly find ways to tell them that people can find common ground. Because for us on this movie anyway, we all feel like everyone wants their kids to be safe in school. Everyone, no matter what your political point of view, right? The discussion and the arguments are happening around how is that safety obtained. And so if we can do that through a movie, if we can do that through an experience that we all enjoy, can we have a conversation perhaps in a way that we can't have on the floor of the Senate? God, I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, incredible what a film can do to start conversations. So, really excited to see where things go with that. And speaking of creating film that does create direct impact, is there any story that you can think of in your career where you really felt that impact, you saw the change that you were creating?
Oh, sure. I mean, honestly, I feel like on on every project I've worked on, whether it has been for set practices, how people were treated, um, the sustainability effort, forget about the story for a minute. Just being with a group of people and taking into account fair practices, not even standard practices, because a lot of standard practices stink. They're not best practices, right? But true, fair, and equitable practices, and the difference that makes on people and how they move forward based on how they were respected as artists and craftspeople on a set is incredible. And then, as far as making a difference, yes, I mean, even from the time I started Tandem, the first movie I ever made was called Wild. Like, we pretty much discovered Ella Purnell and launched her career. Bruce Greenwood was in that movie, and we shot that movie in Alaska at the time. It had a tax credit on 35 millimeter film, and it dealt with sexual abuse and the teenage runaway issue that was really, really quite serious in Alaska, and also just the incredible natural beauty that that state has, and seeing how that community and film audiences reacted to not only the subject matter, but when any of us would speak about, that we were the first movie, we were the first narrative film allowed to shoot in Denali National Park. How'd you pull that off? A year of conversations with the Parks Department, and here's going to be our footprint, and here's how small we're going to be, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to, anything we carry in, we're carrying out. I mean, it was just incredible. So, yes, that's why I say, like, it is the story, but also how we practice our work that ultimately makes a difference. And the thing that lasts, right, for everyone to see is the film. That's the thing that hopefully has impact for a long time. But the other thing that lasts is our experience and the memory we have of working on any given project in the course of our professional lives, and hopefully there's a good amount of those that give us the experience that validate our self-worth and talent and abilities, and we're paid fairly, and we're treated with regard, and we're given a team of people that are professionals and can do the work and reflect the global audience, and that we can feel proud of how we made the thing, not just that we made the thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it seems like the common theme in a lot of your work in terms of being able to create this impact and just making sure things get done right is perseverance. You've talked about how long you had to have some of those discussions and things like that. And I certainly appreciate that. And, we'll take that with me.
Yeah, perseverance wins the day. That is for sure.
So if you'd like, this is the point of the podcast where you can ask me a question. A lot of people have asked why I started the podcast, so we can skip that one.
I will ask you, Jeffrey, you are such an interesting human being, because if you look at your like work over the course of your life, there seem to be so many different avenues that you've taken, right? From like criminal justice to entrepreneurship to the whole cannabis industry. There's just so much. What would you say is the focus of what you do, or like the through line, the spinal column of the things that you choose to put your time and energy into.
Yeah, I mean, appreciate that. And yeah, I do a lot of different things, keeps life interesting. But yeah, I think the common thread is really just trying to make the world a little bit better. You know, my dad's sort of mantra was Tikkun Olam, repair the world, and that's what we were raised on. And so even if these things seem disparate, I think with all of them, there are ways that I can contribute to that, whether it's, making a feature film that's a comedy. Obviously, we talked about all the things that happen within the set and the people that are affected by the production. But I like to think that creating a heartfelt comedy is going to make some people smile, make some people's days, have something they can return to that comforts them potentially. Um, so, that is it in one regard. Cannabis, I feel like, is this herbal medicine that provides a lot of healing opportunities. It's, you know, the laws have been holding up the mess of our criminal justice system. So just trying to break down those walls. And yeah, I mean, I try to make that sort of the centering thing to each thing that I do, is just how do we make the world a little bit better for everyone? How do we make life a little bit more fair? Yeah.
Healing. That's
Yeah.
very cool, Jeffrey. That's really great.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I can be a lot more efficient in my impact, and certainly talking to you helps me understand some ways to do that. So I appreciate it. And if you could snap your fingers and fix one thing in the world, what would it be? And how do you think that change would reverberate?
Gosh, there's so much inequity. I mean, I think today how I would answer that question, because I am sure if you catch me a week from now, my answer might be different. But today, with Climate Week in New York City, I am going to say fix the climate problem. And why I say that is because I personally think there's so much science and proof at this point that this is something real that's happening to our planet Earth. And that a few years ago, already we were up to 500,000 American citizens that were displaced from their homes because of climate. Every year that gets worse and worse and worse. And we're seeing the global effects. We're seeing the heat across Europe. We're seeing the fires. We're seeing the hurricanes, the tornadoes. And unfortunately, climate, the people who experience the impact of climate destruction and change first are the people from the poorest communities, where there's the least amount of infrastructure, the least amount of money to really have any course of action that's helpful immediately to people who might be experiencing this via a natural disaster. And if we all don't make some effort with great urgency, corporations, big corporations at the top of that list, make some changes, governments with big urgency, this planet will not be alive to house us all and our dreams, American or otherwise, for too much longer. So if I were to snap my fingers, that's what I would solve. And I would hope that the solving wouldn't simply be about the result, that, oh, thank God, the climate's fixed, but that what what are the lessons we can take? What are the things we can learn so this doesn't happen again? That's part of my challenge with the COVID of it all. We learned so much during that time, and there's so few of the results that we learned that are still in place. So I would hope that in solving the climate problem, it would be something that would keep creating new jobs and avenues for us as humans to do what we do best, which is be inventive and create circumstances where we can live and behave in a way that doesn't destroy this, perfect planet that exists for us.
Yeah, no, it's such an important topic, especially right now. Obviously, the further we get into the future, the more pressing that it is. But I really appreciated what you said about it's not just the results, it's, sort of the mindset that would come from that. And, I think it's so important that people realize that we are, not only are we all one, all citizens of the universe, but we're all part of the planet. We all are Earth, in my perspective. And I think it would go a really long way for all of us to respect and appreciate that. And I hope that we are, I was going to say slowly but surely on that path, but we need to speed it up.
Yeah, we need to speed it up. It needs to be urgent for sure.
Well, I've kept you for a while today. I really appreciate your time. It's been
Oh, my
awesome.
pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This has been really fun to talk to you and get to know you a little bit better too in this context. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's really been an honor to have you. Excited to share your story with the world, and look forward to continuing our conversations and, exploring opportunities to work together.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeffrey.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of People Are the Answer. If you enjoyed the episode, share it with friends, and reviews or subscriptions on your favorite platforms go a long way to help the show grow. I want to share these incredible people and their remarkable work with as many others as possible. Thanks for your support. For more, go to peoplearetheanswer.com.